have about 47 pounds, I think, of tomatoes here that I need to deal with. I'm gonna turn these into pizza sauce, tomato sauce, some curried tomato preserves, and I'm not sure if there's anything else. I think mostly just pizza sauce and tomato sauce recipes. So we have a lot to deal with here. This is from the Romas that I bought at the end of the summer from a farm stand. I did not grow these. I didn't have a very good tomato year last year, so I purchased these with the intent to preserve them. It is February, and I wish I had already gotten this project taken care of, but I haven't. And here we are. So we're gonna deal with it this weekend. I have a few days to work on these. I definitely am not gonna get all of these done today. I think I'm gonna start with the pizza sauce first because that will take up the majority of the tomatoes, about 20 pounds worth. I guess that's not majority, that's a little less than half. But it will feel good to get rid of several bags and just do like a big recipe at first. And then we'll get to the smaller recipes later. So I need 20 pounds of tomatoes for this pizza sauce recipe. I think this is the recipe that I used last year. I can't quite remember. I was just in my basement getting some jars and stuff out earlier, and I do have 5 jars left of pizza sauce from last year that I canned. And this says that it makes, I think it was 14 half pint jars. Yeah, 14 half pint jars or 7 pint jars. I really like to use half pint jars for my pizza sauce because we can get 2 like small, probably 8 to 10 inch sourdough pizzas out of 1 half pint jar. So that goes kind of a long way when we use 1 jar for 2 individual sized pizzas. So I think I'm just gonna do the half pint jars, and we'll see if we get 14 or 15 or so. Sometimes I feel like it makes a little more, a little less, we'll see. So I'm just gonna start by getting 20 pounds worth. I already have the bags labeled by number, and then I also went ahead and weighed them after I washed them and put them in the bags. And so I know how much is in each bag. I haven't taken any tomatoes out of these bags, so I know how much is in each one. So I'm just gonna get 20 pounds worth out of what's here. I do have a bag of some extras here that's not weighed, and I'm just going to probably add a few to what I have here to make like an even 20 pounds. And then it looks like we have about, so maybe not quite 47, I think we have about 23-ish pounds left. So maybe about 43. I think that was the number, 43. So I'm gonna just stick this back in my freezer to deal with after the pizza sauce, whenever I get to this. I'm not sure if I'm gonna get to the rest of these today or wait until tomorrow to do some of these, but I'm just gonna stick them back in the freezer for now so they'll stay frozen, and then we'll get to making the pizza sauce. Okay, our water is almost at a boil. I don't have a really big slotted spoon anymore to scoop it out. I used to have a really good one that was like kind of a ladle but slotted. I don't have that anymore because it was old and gross, so I threw it out. I have all of my caraway stuff now that I've kind of replaced everything with. And this one is just not very big, but I think it'll do the trick. I'm just gonna get one out at a time after I boil them, and then put them in one of these, slip the skins off. I'll let them cool for a minute because I don't want to touch them when they're boiling. It'll be super hot. But then we'll slip the skins off, and I'll put the skins in a different bowl. I'm gonna use the bigger bowl for the tomatoes. I really wanted to get to this project back in the fall, like not too long after I purchased these and froze them. I got 50 pounds worth, and I did use some of them for a bruschetta recipe. If you saw one of my videos, I did bruschetta in a jar, and it is so, so good. I wanted to make more of that, but unfortunately, now that they're frozen and I'm kind of boiling them down, there's not a good way to chop them up since they were frozen. And for the bruschetta recipe, it requires like chopped pieces. So I think I'm gonna have to turn all of this into some kind of sauce sort of thing, just because the texture is gonna change tremendously compared to when they were fresh. So I made the bruschetta recipe when they were actually fresh and I could chop them easily, and I'm just not gonna be able to do that this time. So that's okay. We still have, I think, 6 or 8 jars of bruschetta down in the basement. So I have plenty to get me through until, you know, next tomato season, which actually will just be in, you know, a few months or so. We've got, I think I purchased these in August last year, so it'll take a while, of course, to grow some or to be able to purchase some, especially here in Colorado. We do not have an early tomato season So yeah, I haven't even started my seeds yet or anything. I need to get a garden planning plan together as far as what I want to grow this year. But I really wanted to take care of this project sooner. I just haven't been able to get to it. So we're here today. I have heard that tomatoes start losing their nutrients after they've been frozen for 3 months. And it's been at least 6 months now. So we're a little behind the game on that, but that's okay because like I said, we're just using it as sauces and things like that. So we'll make sure to get nutrients from whatever meal we're adding it to. So we've come to almost a rolling boil now. I'm just gonna give it a few more minutes and then just kind of start tossing them in. I'm not gonna dump the whole bag in, I don't think. I think it's gonna be not big enough for that because I put quite a bit of water in here. So we'll probably do like half a bag at a time. And then, yeah, just let them boil for a minute or two and then put them in the bowls. Along the same lines, this is actually a roasted Roma pizza sauce. And I think one of my other sauce recipes is like a roasted, actually I think it's a roasted tomato soup that I was gonna try. Again, because they're frozen, I don't think that I can roast them. I don't think that's gonna work out. So we're gonna skip the whole roasting part probably and just do, you know, pizza sauce. I've never roasted them before when I've done my pizza sauce and it's turned out great. So I'm not gonna worry about that step today. This recipe is from Ball Canning. It's actually from the website. I have my book here, but I don't think it's in this book. I'm using this for some other recipes. This one I just got offline off of ballcanning.com. So roasted Roma pizza sauce. All right, let's get our tomatoes in. I'm gonna start with this small bag. I don't want this boiling water to splash everywhere, so we're gonna gently add them to the pot. So we ended up using 4 whole bags and then that small portion. And then I've got several bags remaining for the other recipes. And we'll just see how much we can get done. I have a plan for 4 recipes, but we'll see if we're able to do all of those. Give them a minute or two. And they will start to split. I don't know if you can see that. It's splitting right here along the side. So once it does that, and yeah, I'm already able to peel it off. So I'm just gonna add these to a bowl. So once I see them starting to split, I'll take them out. That's actually why I love freezing tomatoes, because they're so easy to get the skins off afterwards. So if I'm using them fresh for like a bruschetta, I'd rather just use them fresh. But if I'm doing a recipe like a sauce where you don't necessarily want the skins to be in your recipe, then I love to freeze them first because this is the easiest way to get them off. I think you can run them under like hot water as well and get them off that way, but I just find this to be very, very easy. So. And of course, when I added these frozen tomatoes, it brought the water temperature down quite a bit. So it's not boiling anymore, but it's still very hot. So it may take an extra minute or so for some of the tomatoes to start to kind of split or shrivel up. And then once they do, we can remove them. So I'm just gonna continue to add all of these to the pot, take them out once the peels are starting to come off, and then we'll peel them. Do you see how perfectly these peels just come right off? I'm trying not to make a huge mess. So they just peel right off. We're gonna save these and dehydrate them. I have some onion and garlic in the oven. I am actually gonna roast that. I'm not gonna roast the tomatoes obviously, but I am roasting the onions and garlic, and I'm just gonna add that to the pot. So I have 2 huge bowls here. Actually, I'm just gonna pour this juice into this pot that I'm gonna cook everything down in. So I have 2 huge bowls of the tomatoes with the juice and everything. I'm gonna have to probably ladle this in the pot. I'm not gonna be able to pour it in because it's gonna make a huge mess, but I have this really large bowl. You can see this is a massive bowl. And then one that's a little bit smaller, but still pretty large. So I am gonna try to add this all at one time. We might have to sort of do it in batches, but let's go ahead and start cooking some of this down. And I'll add the tomatoes and garlic after they get roasted. It should only take a few minutes. I just have those in the oven at 400 degrees. I'm gonna put this pot on like medium high to start with, to kind of cook these down a little bit, and then we'll sort of simmer them until the volume decreases by half. That's the goal. And we are making a mess. We're gonna have to do a big deep clean of this kitchen when we're done with this project. So I don't think I can fit any more in here right now. I need to just kind of let this cook, and then we'll try to add some more once we're able to get it cooked down. And then I can always take an immersion blender and just kind of chop these up, blend these up. And that's probably what I'll end up doing depending on how well they cook down. I actually just might get another pot out and go ahead and cook these in the other pot, and then we'll add the 2 together, just since my pot isn't large enough. There we go. And I do want to make sure that I keep kind of stirring these tomatoes because they will burn, even though there's a lot of juice in here. Especially once they start to cook down a bit, they could easily burn. So I just want to be really careful and stir them pretty often. And then we've got all of our tomato peels here that I'm going to dehydrate. I'm just going to lay them on our trays and dehydrate them for quite a while probably. I don't know how long it's going to take. I've never dehydrated tomato peels before. I don't think it'll take too long, probably several hours, and it's 1 o'clock now in the afternoon, so I'll probably just give it the rest of the day to dehydrate. To put it this way. Trying to squeeze all of the juice out so that there's not too much liquid, so that it'll dehydrate a little faster. I'm really excited about these. I have, of course, the other tomatoes in the freezer, so I'll have more peels to dehydrate as well, but I've never tried making tomato powder before, so really excited about this. It's an easy way to just kind of use up the entire tomato. You're not really wasting anything. And the rest of this juice I'll probably just add to my pot over there. I don't want to overcrowd them, so we've got plenty of trays here. I think I'm gonna set it 8 hours and probably 145. So we've got our tomatoes cooking down. They're at like a medium simmer right now. You just want to cook it low and slow, so I think this is going to take several hours. I still have the garlic and onion in the oven, but I'm gonna get that out soon, chop it up, and just add a little bit to each bowl. And then we'll combine the 2 at the end. So I'll see you guys in a couple of hours. So I've got it all in one pot now. It's been reducing down. I added some fresh basil, about 1/4 cup. And I'm gonna add just some oregano as well to it. I also added salt, about 2 teaspoons is what it called for. I just kind of estimated, I didn't really measure. But I do like to have oregano in my pizza sauce, so I'm gonna add a good bit of that as well. You can adjust the seasonings as needed. That doesn't change the recipe or affect the recipe at all. You just wanna make sure everything else is kind of where it needs to be, but as far as spices, none of that really makes a difference. And I'm just gonna let this continue to simmer in here for probably another at least hour, if not 2. It's definitely reduced down a bit, which is why I was able to fit it into one pot now. But I just want it to thicken and be kind of a thicker pizza sauce. And we'll see if we need to go in at the end and immersion blend it. I did try using the little food strainer attachment for the KitchenAid, and I didn't really like it. It was just taking so much of the pulp out of the tomatoes, which I think is kind of the point, but it was leaving me with more of just a tomato juice rather than what I want with like a sauce. So I decided there's not really that many seeds in these Romas anyways. Not enough to where it's really gonna change the flavor or affect any of it for us. We really don't mind the seeds. So I'm honestly just not gonna worry about milling it out. All right, so I think this is gonna be the final product here. It's not incredibly thick, but thick enough. You can see, I mean, it kind of sits on the spoon, kind of rests on the spoon. It's not liquidy, and I think it'll thicken up a little bit in the jars. It usually does after it's canned. So we're gonna go with this because it's already 5:30, and it's probably gonna take me 2 batches to can this up. Definitely gonna take 2 batches. So it's gonna take me a while to finish this up tonight, so I'm just ready to go ahead and start putting it in the jars and getting it canned up. I did taste test it too and added a little bit more salt. It is really, really good though. You can definitely taste the basil, and I love that. So I'm just gonna get these out of the canner. I'm gonna start with 9 jars, and I have some other ones washed as well. And just split up the canner loads, probably do 9 in one and then however many is left in the other. So I think I could probably fill 15 or 16 jars. We'll see. There's a lot of pizza sauce here, so we'll see how much it ends up being. So tomatoes are pretty acidic in nature usually, but we want to just make sure that it's safe to water bath. So we just want to make sure that the acid ratio is exactly where it needs to be. We're gonna add a half of a tablespoon per half pint jar. You can add citric acid as well. I don't have any of that. I usually use lemon juice, so that's what we're using today. So I am just gonna go ahead and put a half tablespoon of lemon juice, and you wanna use bottled, not fresh, into each jar. This doesn't change the flavor of the pizza sauce. I haven't noticed that, at least. It's really just a preservation method to make sure that the sauce is acidic and safe for water bath canning. If you're not really sure if your tomatoes are acidic enough and you don't add anything like this, then you can always pressure can them, so then you don't have to worry about it. But I like to water bath can them. It just takes less time, and that's just usually what the recipe calls for anyway, so that's just what I do. So we're gonna start filling our jars. I like to keep my headspace at least half an inch, if not a little bit more, because tomato products will siphon out of the jars a lot quicker than other things, a lot easier. So I just always like to have enough headspace so I can hopefully try to prevent that from happening. So you can see it's a little loose, it's not super thick. I could have added tomato paste to it, but I didn't because, like I said, I think it'll thicken up a little bit in the jars, and if not, I can always add a little tomato paste or something later when we put it on our pizza, but I think it'll be okay. So this has taken pretty much the entire afternoon to do. So tomato products are definitely the most time-consuming ones, I feel like. And before we put our lids and bands on, I'm going to wipe our rim with some white vinegar just to get all the tomato sauce off of each rim. That way we don't have any seal failures. And you guys, I've made a bunch of canning videos. You guys have probably seen this entire process before. If you haven't, I have many videos kind of explaining the full process. I'm using my Presto electric pressure canner because it pressure cans and water bath cans. And it's just mindless. I don't have to sit here and monitor it too much. I don't have to think too much about it. It's just easier than trying to do like a boiling water bath canner on the stove. I also don't have a pot big enough to do that, so I just use my Presto canner, and I use it for canning everything. I really love it. I'll have it linked in the description below if you guys want to go purchase one or take a look at it. They're really cool. I got mine off Amazon, so I can link that for you below, as well as this recipe for the pizza sauce. I'll put that in the description as well. Then we're gonna put our lids and bands on, fingertip tight. It's funny that they're already sealing. That doesn't usually happen before I put it in the canner. And we just want the water line about an inch above. And we're gonna water bath can for 50 minutes. The recipe says 35, but I have to adjust for altitude, so I have to add 15 extra minutes. So that's why it seems like such a long time. For this next recipe, I'm making curry tomato preserves. I'm just toasting up a little onion. Into this, we're gonna add a 1/3 cup of lemon juice. And 2½ cups of sugar. And 6 pounds of tomatoes, and I just did the same thing. I just put them in hot water to get the peels off. We're already making a mess this morning. So we're gonna bring this to a boil. And then we're gonna cook it uncovered for 40 minutes or until it starts to become like a jam texture. And then we'll add the rest of the ingredients in just a few minutes. Our tomato peels from yesterday are done, so I'm gonna take them out and put them in my Ninja food processor just to grind them up. And I let them go for the rest of the day yesterday, so probably about 9 hours. And then I just turned them off because I didn't want to deal with them last night. And then turn them on for another hour, hour and a half this morning. So they are all done and they are crispy, and that's what we want to turn them into tomato powder. And then I'm gonna refill this with today's tomato peels. And I want it to be pretty fine. So I feel like that's a really good kind of consistency of what I want. It's pretty fine. There's a little bit of chunks in there, but not too bad. And I'm just pouring this into a nice dry jar. Perfect. All right, here's our tomato powder. That looks so good. I might have to get a quart jar to put all of this in once I finish up with these tomatoes, but this looks and smells so good. I'm just putting the cap on just so that moisture from the air doesn't get in, because we want this to stay nice and dry. I'm gonna make a roasted tomato soup with these tomatoes, so I'm just gonna get some olive oil heated up, cook some onion and garlic with some salt and pepper. We're gonna add some white wine and then add our tomatoes in. So about 2 cups of diced onion, 4 cloves of garlic, about 2 teaspoons of salt, and a teaspoon of pepper, and we're just gonna cook this up. It says until tender but not brown, so we don't want our garlic to burn especially. We're gonna add a cup of dry white wine. I like to just buy these little cartons of wine, so I'm not opening a whole wine bottle just for this. So we're gonna cook this for about 10 minutes or so until the wine evaporates a bit, and stirring it often. My onions and garlic did brown a little bit, but they're not burnt, so I think it'll add a good roasted flavor, especially since I didn't roast the tomatoes. This is a roasted tomato soup, but it's impossible to roast the tomatoes once they're frozen, so I think this will add a good flavor. Okay, since our wine has cooked in for about 10 minutes, it's not fully evaporated, but it's really cooked in. It's mostly evaporated. I'm gonna go ahead and add in our tomatoes next. So I'm gonna put the whole tomatoes in first, and then I'll pour the juice in. We're gonna add 4 cups of chicken or vegetable stock. I have some veggie broth that I made that's homemade, so I'm just gonna add this whole thing in. And we've got a cup of chopped basil. And then we're gonna cook this for about 20 minutes until it's heated through. And then we'll get it blended up. So this is still our curried tomato preserves. I just went through with the immersion blender just to kind of get those big chunks of tomato blended up a little bit. And they are still a little bit chunky, which is what we want with our preserves. So I'm gonna go ahead and add the rest of the ingredients. We're gonna add 2 tablespoons of curry powder. I think I'm gonna have to pour this out. Whoop. That was a little much. So we'll do a little less here. We're gonna do a 1/4 teaspoon of, it says ground red pepper, which I think is pretty much the same thing as cayenne pepper, so that's what I'm gonna use. And then 2 teaspoons of salt. And I didn't say at the beginning, I just had a 1/2 cup of diced onion in here before I added the sugar, the lemon juice, and the tomatoes. So we're gonna do about 2 teaspoons of salt. And then we're gonna continue to cook this for about 20 minutes or so until it starts to kind of form into like a jam texture. That's the texture you want. You want it to be pretty thick and jam-like. So we're gonna do like medium-low heat now and just let it simmer. See, there's a little bit of seeds in there from the Romas, but really not a ton. I know that seeds can cause some bitterness in your sauces and things, but I really don't think it's enough to make a difference. And we don't really care too much about that, so I'm not worried about it. If that does concern you, definitely use the food strainer or the food mill to get those seeds out. So we've got it all stirred in. We're just gonna let it simmer. And then I'm gonna continue to work on my tomato soup. I'm trying to multitask today since it took me so long to do that pizza sauce yesterday. And I never showed you guys the final result, but I'll show you that here in just a few minutes. So our soup is heated through. I'm just gonna in batches, put it in the blender, and get it blended up. Okay, so I'm gonna fill my jars with the curried tomato preserves. It thickened up pretty nice, but I kind of wanted to keep it a little bit more as a sauce this time too. We like to put it on chicken. I think it could be good on like fish or really any kind of dish, honestly. It's like sweet, but also kind of spicy at the same time. So anything that would pair well with. The recipe in the book has it paired with a flatbread with sweet potato and cilantro. I think that would be delicious as well. And again, I'm gonna leave about 1/2 inch of headspace. The recipe calls for 6 jars, but I think it's gonna make a little bit more than that. So I heated up 10. We'll see how many we get. We're already at 8, so let's see. I think we can fill one more. So that filled 9 jars perfectly. We're just gonna go through and get out any air bubbles. I don't have any more to add if we need to adjust headspace, but that's okay because I think that they're about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch from the top, so that's perfect. Like I said yesterday, the tomato products tend to siphon out a little bit faster than other products, so we just want to keep a really good amount of headspace so that doesn't happen, hopefully. I don't think that happened with any of my pizza sauce yesterday. I'll have to check out the jars just to make sure, but I think that the headspace that we measured for those was perfect. So kind of in between like a jam consistency and like a salsa consistency. But again, we like to put it on certain dishes like chicken and rice dishes and things like that. So I think having it more as a sauce a little bit will be perfect. We just want to clean our rims really well. Make sure there's no residue on them, especially with sugar. That can easily cause a seal failure if it's on the rim. So we just want to make sure there's nothing sticky on the outer edges. And the recipe says to water bath can for 10 minutes, adjusting for altitude, so I'm gonna do 25 minutes, and then these will be done. These look so good. I'm really excited about these. I did taste test it, of course, before I put it in the jars, and it's the perfect like sweet and spicy level. I just love the ratios, and I think it could pair well with a lot of different things, like I said. So I might try to experiment and see what else I can use it for. They're already starting to pop, which is great. Hopefully they all seal. I don't usually have lots of seal failure issues, so I think it'll be fine. Looks like there's a little air bubble that just happened right here, but I think it'll settle and be totally okay. Here's all of our pizza sauce from yesterday. Some of them, the first batch turned out a little liquidy, you can see. But then after it continued to simmer for another hour while I was waiting for that batch, the second batch turned out a little bit thicker. So we ended up with 19 jars. And because I wanted to get that second batch done, I ended up doing 2 full pint jars as well. So we wouldn't use this for 2 pizzas. This would be for more than that, obviously. But I'm really, really excited that we got 19 jars of pizza sauce. We still have, I think, 5 downstairs, so this will last us a good long while. Alright, I'm finishing up the tomatoes with one last recipe. This is going to be a vodka sauce. I just have 1.5 cups of diced onion and 5 cloves of garlic kind of toasting in here. We're going to add some other ingredients now. We're going to add a cup of just plain vodka. And half a cup of water, 2 teaspoons of salt, and a teaspoon of pepper. I did have to add quite a bit more salt to the tomato soup, so if you add extra, it's no big deal. You'll probably want to add extra, actually. And then we like pepper, so I might add a little extra pepper too. We're going to bring these ingredients to a boil and then simmer it uncovered for 10 minutes. Kind of similar to the tomato soup once we added the wine. So we've got our tomato soup in here. This is going to pressure can for 50 minutes. This is why I love this canner, because you can pressure can and water bath can, and it's just so easy. As long as you follow the instructions, you really can't mess it up. So we're going to leave the vent cover off for now until it does the vent for 10 minutes, and then we'll add that on and pressure can for 50 minutes. This automatically adjusts for altitude, so I don't have to worry about that part when I'm pressure canning. Alright, this has been simmering for a little bit. Sorry if you hear the pressure canner in the background. We're going to add the tomatoes now and then bring it back up to a boil, and then we're going to turn the heat down and simmer it for, it just says until soft, and then run it through a food mill, which we're not going to do that, but I probably will run it through either a blender or immersion blender. We'll see. So our vodka sauce, this is actually a vodka sauce base. You have to add heavy cream to it once you make it into sauce. So this is just the base. We're going to add 1/4 cup of lemon juice to just finish it. And then I'm going to get it ready for the canner in just a second. I need to wash some jars first. But I just got our tomato soup out and they smell delicious. So instead of adding it to each jar, the lemon juice this time, we're just going to add it to the whole pot. That's what it calls for. And I'm just going to give that a good stir. And all of these recipes came from either the Ball Canning website or the book. I'll link both in the description for you guys to check out. And so when we heat this vodka sauce base, we're going to stir in 2 tablespoons of heavy cream for each pint jar. And then we can add more basil or oregano or whatever herbs we want then. And have it with pasta or whatever we want vodka sauce for. So I've got my vodka sauce base canned up. It made 4 pint jars and 1 half pint. We are gonna water bath can this for 40 minutes and then adjusting for altitude, so 55 minutes total for me. So here's everything that we ended up with. We have 40 jars here. So the remaining 40 pounds of tomatoes made 40 jars of various tomato products. We've got some pizza sauce. Some of this, the first batch was a little more liquidy, if you guys remember, than the second batch. But we've got some pizza sauce. I think this was the second batch, just a little bit thicker, you can tell. Really excited to have that. We've got some tomato soup. We ended up with 7 pints of tomato soup. 19 half pints of pizza sauce. We've got the curried tomato preserves here, which also looks kind of like a sauce, but it's a little bit jam-like as well. So I think we ended up with 9 of those or so. And then we've got, I just need to label these, but this is our vodka sauce base that we'll just have to add heavy cream to when we use it in a recipe or for pasta sauce. And we ended up with, I think it was 4 and a small half pint of the vodka sauce base. Also, I dehydrated all of the tomato peels and ended up with a full pint jar of dehydrated tomato peels that we'll use to thicken up sauces or just add flavor to dishes. I am thrilled to have this. I have not done this with my tomato peels before, but it was so easy. I'm definitely gonna do this from now on. So here is our final product of what we ended up with. So excited. I've already washed all of these. I washed them last night, just let them dry. We're gonna store them with the rims off, and I'm gonna get these into my basement pantry. Thank you guys so much for joining, and I'll see you in the next one.